As promised, the Force. I've had a lot of different theories of the Force over the years, formed in part by the different ways it's been portrayed, usually in the EU, sometimes in the AU. But for the most part, I've never really been able to codify a single theory that I felt matched everything with the Force until now. So I'm going to try and upfront this as quickly as possible, and then I'll try and explain it. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. I think the Force is an economy. Go ahead, make fun. What is an economy? Economy is a smooth movement of goods and services through a system to ensure that everything keeps operating and functioning. That's what an economy is, really. To me, having watched Rebels, having thought about how the AU approaches things, I think within the AU, the Force can be best described as the system and network by which all of the energy that maintains stars, plants, animals, people, gravity, momentum, all of these things that make up the bedrocks of reality. And this energy is in a constant circuit and movement, a flow throughout the pattern of what is reality. And that this pattern is functionally the will of the Force. Whether truly sentient or sapient, that's debatable. I don't think so, though. I think it's more like it is simply adhering to a pattern in the same way that a mathematical formula would, or a specific type of energy proton, or energy particle, that's the word I was going for, would. It just adheres to its pattern by the very nature of its being. Thus, anytime anything acts, it is taking up some of this energy and then moving it further forward into the system so that other things might act. If you think about the amazing complexity of this galaxy, all the creatures, all the beings, all the function of it working, the amount of energy and power there must be astonishing. And it, of course, is constantly deviating from that pattern. Why? Because of sentience and sapience. Because of free will, to put it in more simple terms, does not obviously adhere to a pattern, and thus, well, there's constant malleable deviations which are happening all throughout. So it's not one uniform pattern. It's more like a giant system which is constantly trying to self-correct. Hence the will of the Force. This then perfectly explains the light side and the dark side. The light side can accomplish so much, for the most part, because it is moving through the pattern. Because it is doing exactly what the pattern wants, and trying to restore balance, aka trying to make sure that the system is sending energy, literally, physically sending energy, as well as metaphorically, into the ways and places that it should. In other words, the light side is all about finding your place in that fractal and adhering to it. The dark side is the exact opposite, trying to enforce your will upon this fractal, trying to make the pattern adhere to what it is you want it to do. And this is a little aside thing. This also kind of helps to explain why the dark side is seen as so corruptive. Because the more you draw on the Force in any format, the more energy is being drained from the system that otherwise should, according to the pattern, go elsewhere. Thus, that's why we see so few lightsiders really draw on absolutely massive amounts of the Force, not unless it causes issues. And that's why Darksiders so frequently call on large amounts of the Force, and it definitely causes issues. And the system abhors them because they are literally draining out of a function that is supposed to be operating in a certain manner, and it isn't because it doesn't have the energy it needs, because they're using it for their own ends. They are basically, I don't have a proper term, they are aberrations. Thus, the dark side is in this system not actually a real thing per se. It's just those who use the Force in aberration to the pattern. And the light side also doesn't really exist. It's just using the Force in service of the pattern. You see? This could also help to explain the Bendu, someone who is in absolute servitude to the pattern. Someone who doesn't care about one way or the other, morality or sentience or whatever. They just adhere to whatever should be according to this pattern. I think that's everything. I'm just double-checking my thoughts here. This has been cycling through my brain ever since it really cohesed as I was watching this show. It's not the form of the Force I like best, I'll be completely honest. It's not the interpretation. Like, if I was writing the Force, it's not what I would do. But near as I can tell, it does fit most of what the AU has going for it. It even fits some of the EU. Look at KOTOR 2 for a second. After KOTOR 1, the galaxy was basically diseased as a direct result of massive amounts of Force energy being used and consumed at singular points. And the whole galaxy was broken. That was one of the biggest themes of KOTOR 2, was that at a fundamental level, society was broken, and the galaxy was rotting, which would make sense if there was a pattern that had been deviated from. And to further emphasize this, I think this in terms of math. Let me break this down in a really simple way. If you give a plant water and soil, but no light, it will wither. If that light is being absorbed or taken away for something else, it will rot, right? And of course, if you give it a little bit of light, well, that plant will, you've probably seen pictures of this, where a plant will like start to grow towards the light to catch more of it, to try and balance itself out. That's what I mean by pattern, a fundamental function of reality. I guess that's all I've got. I'm very curious to hear what you guys think of this one. Thank you once again for this journey through Rebels. I'll see you next time, guys.